I'm Ghislaine Chabert. I am Associate Professor in Information and Communication Sciences, and my main research topics are spatiality and emotion around new images, forms, and screen experiences. With Gaëtan Lecoirer, we are very happy to be here in this special space to tell you about a research I have the pleasure to supervise with my colleague Marc Vera around the PhD work of Gaëtan in LLSETI laboratory. Andovan is a multidisciplinary project coming from LLSETI, which allows to represent a Celtic legend and its heritage through a new communication technology. The Andovan project allows researchers from different disciplines, information and communication sciences, art sciences, and British and Irish civilizations, to collaborate and to question the forms and representation that Irish mythological stories can take and the perceptions that arise from them. Andovan, which means the earth in Irish Gaelic, is a continuation of an Impossible Realities project, opening a new chapter on the question of the valorization of a heritage of legends through an immersive mediation. Indeed, Impossible Realities project was an interactive experience of augmented and virtual reality that offered a dive into the heritage of Savoie, the lake and sunken cities, and its legends. In continuity, Andovan will take the form of a virtual reality experience, allowing the user to immerse himself or herself in an imaginary world of myths and legends. This proposes a digital mediation inspired by the world of comics and combines augmented reality and virtual reality technologies. This mixed reality device has been developed with respect to the legend story chosen that will now be presented by Gaëtan.
So as I described, this project entitled Andovan is a virtual and augmented reality adaptation of an Irish and Celtic legend. The project is experienced by two individuals who personify two main characters from the legend The Tragic Death of the Trajan Children. Two heroes stand out in the legend of the Trajan Children: Lou and Brian. They are two antagonistic characters, and after a murder committed by Brian and his brother, Lou sends them into exile to repent themselves. Through magic, Lou will also interfere in their quest to kill or at least make them fail. This legend seems conducive to a development in mixed reality. If the story unfolds in a linear way, the systemic construction of the narrative is actually structured like a network, a map. Indeed, the topographical work of the legend is framed by a topology of the narration. This specific map, this narrative topology, allows us to explore and set up real and virtual and fairy-like places, as well as other worlds. Otherworld is a fictional geographical interface in the art of the legend's architecture. These last ones are translated by abrupt ellipses in the narrative. We propose a reading of the legend through a mixed reality adaptation. Two heroes, the two main characters, are embodied by two users with either a virtual reality headset or a smartphone provided with the augmented reality app. The user with the AR in hand embodies Lou, and the other one in VR embodies Brian. What we call a mixed reality is the hybridation of AR and VR powered by a body in presence in a technical device, inspired by the concept of mixity described by Paul Virilio in La Machine de Vision. We seek from this project, and thus from our thesis, to understand how the narration is structured in mixed reality, in our case, in the mixity, of the used media. So we try to highlight the mechanism of graphic novel architecture worked by Will Eisner, Mazzucchelli, or Marc-Antoine Mathieu, for example. To simultaneously play with the body, a structure, a gesture, in order to build a narration in mixed reality. We try to identify the place and the incidences of the body towards the narration. Within the framework of this thesis, graphic novel and mixed reality toward new spaces of narration, we set up this project and the van to understand the mechanics in graphic novel and in mixed reality. Graphic novel and mixed reality share a similar architecture, and the mechanism fit together to form a complex, immersive new system. The structure that we develop allows to highlight the evolution of graphic novel associated to a study of the uses, and an opening to the hypermedia, the networking between uses and narration through spaces and interaction. Here are some questions that we try to answer with our research. How the narration from now on creates new actions? How does mixed reality build new approaches toward the narration, and how does the narration build mixed reality? How the body in presence of the user requires to think about the process of fabrication of a mixed reality.
Thus, the narrative is thought as a collective and participative experience. Indeed, by playing the different characters and entering in body of each one, alternately, through augmented reality and virtual reality, the users can experience different interactional modes, less or more constraining and restrictive, with a feeling of participation. One of the main objectives with this research is to observe multi-users' activities and their embodied social interactions during and the van experiences. In this communication, we would like to focus specifically to the social practices increased with the device. We would also present the original approach followed, combining sensory design and visual methods to answer such questions and to make the participative experience more visible. Much more than a simple game, this device combines playful experience and experimentation with Celtic legends. This research aims to understand the uses of screens and devices as they are experienced from the inside, from the digital territories and media frequented by the participants. With this method, we also can try to understand more in depth the experiential dimensions in the way that Merleau-Ponty has described them before. The screen becomes this third place where the meaning is reflected in the intersection of my experiences and the intersection of my experiences with those of others. Through the mixed reality setup in the project, this research contributes on the one hand to the telling of an Irish legend in an original and artistic form, and on the other hand, to the understanding of the experience that can be made of it. The relationship to digital technologies, to the forms of relationship to images, and to the spatial and aesthetic forms that legends and digital realities cover, is then questioned from the emotional angle generated by the experience. Concretely, these experiential dimensions have been captured by a highly immersive and physically involving visual method. The use of video facilitating an empathic immersion in the studied object was chosen in preference. Indeed, as Sarah Pink said, the integration of video into this method can serve as a catalyst for creating ethnographic understandings of other people's experiences and representing these experiences to a wider audience.
In this research, we combine visual method with research creation. Research creation projects typically involve a creative process, an experimental aesthetic component, or an artistic work. So the methodology is actually the artwork. So we can illustrate research creation in this sentence of Pierre Soulages. It is what I make that teach me what I seek. And Raymond Roussel, on his side, expressed his project of writing close to a research creation methodology under the term of process. So this process is an act of storytelling. It forms a structure that Roussel puts in place in some of his books, like narrative singularity. The term process that we use from Roussel already tell a kind of story, so in the very way of making the project, as well as the way of studying, capturing, analyzing the very use of the project. We establish a process of creation in mixity that allows to meet the creative research with the visual method. The Andovan project was experimented during the second week of January by various individuals in the Savoie Mont Blanc University in Chambéry. 10 people tried the project on 3 different experimental fields: a library, a room in the office of the communication and intermedia department, and a corridor giving onto a staircase. Andovan is a technical device that needs to be transposable from field to another. The map here that you can see on the screen shows us that the project was experimented in 3 different places and in 3 different conditions. The shape of the experimental field depends largely on the primary constraints of the place, where we place ourselves, the dimensions of the building, and the interior architecture of the building. We managed to make sure also that the user in VR doesn't hurt him or herself against a wall or object during the experiment. The user with the AR, unlike the user in VR, is aware of his or her environment and can evolve in an experimental field that he or she is able to redraw constantly by moving around easily, and he or she avoids obstacles easily. During the experiment, I have to control the AR part of the project, and the man was and actually still is work in progress. I had only one smartphone at a time to record and use the augmented reality. It was easier that way for the project to work and for me to record and capture some images and some information. Among these people, none of them were aware of the legend on which the project is based, and these people knew only partial information or some specific detail related to the project and my thesis, communicated during some seminar, for example. Each individual was filmed by myself with my smartphone, like I said, and in the same time, a captation was made in the VR and the AR to record what we saw. So we analyzed the behavior, but also the images produced in AR and in VR.
Following several sessions of captation observation, the question of the representation of the experiential and the aesthetic forms to make feel the emotions towards such images arose. We observed that the VR experience could generate some frustration because many participants had to remain spectators of the experience or wait patiently for their turn to be able to experience, unlike in the cinema, where the experience is immediately social. We observed that virtual reality experiences, whether they are presented in festivals, fairs, museums, are accompanied by a public and social use, as you can see in this image. Indeed, since immersive experiences are relatively time-consuming, audiences wait their turn to experience the project and watch without understanding the foreign attitudes of users immersed in the experiment. The idea of a double view restitution of the immersive experience can make visible what is lived from the inside to a public too large to experiment a media by nature individual. This observation also reveals the fact that virtual reality is still looking for a place for its use. That's why we thought about a device that could show the experience to spectators in the public space. This approach allows to see in the same shot the physical game of the user's performative signs of emotion and their looks and movements in the virtual reality, immersed emotions. This double view thus allows to dissociate and at the same time to associate two forms of realities and emotional worlds lived by the users and the spectators to offer a common to the experience. This editing also allows the viewer to visualize the film of immersive experiences. The social experiment is then made visible by the methodological device. It is, in a way, an augmented reality of the experience. Here is an example of a restitution with a double view, double vue, with a project Impossible Realities, quoted before. The particularity is that we can see altogether the body of a user moving during the experience and the content the user is experimenting in a same image.
After the user experience, we made a report to confront images made during the experiment in double view, and the reaction and the testimonies. We see through an embodied and disembodied point of view and some interpretations that leads to the meaning of the body. So the body of the user in the device tells us the actual story. Through visual methods and research creations, we use artistic and anthropological references to analyze our own work, our own report, and learn about concepts, mistakes, and we try to focus on and also move on. One of the first notions on which we must lean is the location of the body in VR and AR. It is above all the location of the user's body that serves as a foundation of the experience. For example, the space between me, the point of view of the images, and the user is a distance, an ellipsis in the structure of the mixity. It is a space offered by the AR character or user to the VR character or the VR user. A single space where one user plays with alterity. The users are immersed in the narrative process of the experience. This is a construct, a creation by the uses of the body that we call the locus. The locus is the social place of the face-to-face, where two bodies in presence virtually collide. It is the mandatory first stage of the complex architecture of graphic novel in mixed reality. One of the reactions during the experiment and following the interviews is focused on abstraction. A seduction of an abstraction by the forms, so the aesthetic pleased the users, but also the technique of the device aroused the curiosity of the user. Then the abstraction by the gesture, which makes the poetic of the experience, but where the user was quickly lost. Among our users, some regrets from, for example, relation to the narrative not obvious enough, or does not understand the narrative, and thus very quickly, after some gestures, the user settled and asked what to do. Like you can see on the images, some body expressions very meaningful. My presence in the experiment also allows the users to lean on me and ask me what to do in basic discussion. It was a bias, but also showed me the importance of the relation and the dynamics between two individuals two person, two body in one singular experimental field. One space. It is a staging of a locus, sort of, a face-to-face of two users. We must therefore use this to build the narrative system, not an actual fiction or a casual discussion, just like the machine to be another experience, great experience that we'll be able to talk in the Q&A section. The narration through immersions in a graphic novel design narrative mechanism within a mixed reality. It opens the study of the reader's body in the experience. We dive not in a fiction, but in a real narrative architecture in which we can analyze, create spaces from the gestures of the users. Exactly like this presentation made into a Unity 3D, just like it's actually the software that I used to create the Andovan project. So since the beginning of this presentation, our movements from images to images, slide to slide, have built a path and illustrated you how could be organized a mixity structure in principle. This truly echoes the clip Take On Me by AA, whose character journey is not conceived through a fiction, but rather in concrete explorations of a tangible narrative architecture, the photo novel or the graphic novel. The sequence and the texture used in the video clip build the architecture of the narration on which the spectator can lean on and almost immerse himself or herself in the other world of the characters, so the characters of the singer or the character of the woman. For Andovan, we tried to do the same with maps and elliptic black and white spaces between users, between individuals, between AR and VR, in graphic novel and in mixed reality.